Welcome into a brand new episode of the Patriots Hub podcast. Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff with you from 98.5thesportshub.com. Thursday morning ahead of the Patriots preseason finale. We're almost there, Dolloff. We're almost there. One more game until they count. You feeling
Just
it?
one more fake game.
That's right.
Yeah, I know. One more fake football game. Yeah, let's get through this the best we can, Bart. This goes for the entire region of New England. No disrespect to the guys that are going to be on the field. So I feel like the preseason finales can be sneaky entertaining because the guys out there are playing for they're playing their hearts out, right? So we'll do our best to get people ready for the players that are going to be out there.
No, I think that's a really good way to put it, Matt, is that, yeah, you're not going to see the starters in this game. Isn't so much about how do you feel about Drake May for the course of the season? How do we feel about the offensive line big picture? But the reality is 18 training camp practices, 2 preseason games. If you don't know by now how you feel, I don't know what you've been doing, right? This game's more about, it's not about 1 through 30 on the roster. It's about 31 through 90. This is about figuring out the bubble. This is about figuring out the practice squad. There might be a couple of position battles on the line that we'll get to. But this is really, guys, to your point, who's going to have a job come the first week of September, whether that be on the Patriots roster, that be on another roster, whether that be on a practice squad. Because the thing you always hear about this game, and Elliott Wolf and why am I blanking on the guy they brought in from the Giants? Ryan Cowden. Thank you. I've been doing that all week. Elliott Wolf and Ryan Cowden talked about this week. These guys aren't just playing for the Patriots decision makers. They're playing for the decision makers of all 32 NFL teams. Because maybe you ball out tonight, right? And Patriots ultimately can't keep you. There's another team that's interested if you get cut, or maybe there's a trade opportunity. And we'll use that to start off. We're going to do the same format as last week. 3 things each we're watching. It's essentially the big 3. We're borrowing from Matt and Ty Sports Hub Underground. By the way, new episode out yesterday. Go check it out. Since I went first, Matt has the hat on, actually. This is not a Sports Hub Underground hat. I get asked that. It's just a generic Boston hat. I bought this before.
What the hell's with the hats? What the hell's going on there?
I actually bought this before you guys came up with that logo, but it works.
Yeah, quickly, like if you're any Bruins fans watching this, if you're also a Bruins fan, you happen to be a Bees fan, go check that out. Ty is the best, and I try to get as much as I can out of his Bruins insight every week, so go check that out. Audio only, though. It's not on YouTube right now for the newest episode. Apple, Spotify, 985thesportshub.com, Sports Hub app. All right, done plugging.
In the meantime, so, okay, now that we've got that out of the way, to go back to the setup, guys are auditioning for all 32 NFL teams tonight. They get released, or if they get traded. And Dolph, I'm going to let you go first this week because I went first last week, and I think your first take is along those lines.
Oh wait, which take am I going with right now? With the trade? Stuff?
Yeah.
Did we settle on one player that I need to focus on, Barth? I feel like we got crossed up in the show prep there.
Oh, I had 3. I had 3 on the rundown there.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, you want me to focus on the wide receivers, right?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry for stumbling there.
No, you're good.
You kind of gave me a vague setup there, Bart. Sorry. That's on me though. Yeah, I mean, Javon Baker's a guy that's probably going to be out there, and so you wonder if he'll have trade value. I just look at these trades going around with the 49ers making trades for receivers, and the other one I'm blanking on. But the Vikings, they're looking for a veteran receiver.
Saints added a receiver too.
The Saints, that's the one.
Yep.
But yeah, the Vikings looking for a veteran receiver. So I wonder if the Patriots could get involved there. They have some veteran receivers. I'm not saying that they're exactly going to trade Mac Hollins right now. I wish Kendrick Bourne was healthy. He might have some trade value. Maybe he is close to getting healthy. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. And Javon Baker, if he really shows out tonight, maybe they could get something for him. I'm not saying they're going to get anything substantial in a Javon Baker trade, but if you get anything for him at this point, honestly, like this is a guy that you might cut if you're not going to get anything for him in a trade. But if a team that was showing interest in him in the draft a year ago might look at him and say, all right, this is a guy we'll take a chance on. He doesn't have a future in New England, so we'll take a chance on him. We need a receiver. We need depth, that whole thing. So it'll be nice to see if he can, put together a good finish here. He had, I thought, an okay preseason opener. We touched on how he made plays on special teams.
Yeah.
But then, I thought he stumbled last week in Minnesota, and so it'd be nice if he could finish strong. Maybe they could get something for him in a trade. And yeah, so that's that's going to be interesting to see. I would love to see if they could trade a receiver for tackle straight up, or a receiver for an O lineman.
Yeah.
But that might have to be someone else off the roster, one of the other guys that's been rumored in a trade.
Yeah, I'll just tack on to that. Anthony Jennings, Kyle Duggar. I think especially Duggar. I think Jennings at this point, teams know what he is, and he's on the block because he's not a fit. He'll probably play tonight, I would think. Mike Reese, we haven't gotten any concrete reporting one way or the other. Mike Reese kind of suggested on Twitter, based on the usage that the starters had on Tuesday, they're probably not going to play tonight. That doesn't include Jennings. I just meant to say that off the top, but him and Kyle Duggar, I think, is more of a showcase player. Where is he at physically? Any of those guys, you can trade any of those guys to help depth somewhere. Safety, linebacker, offensive line's obviously the big one. That would be outstanding if they could trade any of those three, really, for a lineman. But I think it's a big showcase for those guys tonight, and that leads me into my first point, which is the safety depth. I think there's a spot to be won there that, because of how much we've talked about Kyle Duggar, and me and you have talked about this a little bit. I haven't seen it talked about as much in the big picture. But if they move on from Kyle Duggar, whether they trade him, whether they cut him, whatever it ends up being, right? The locks you have there right now are Jabril Peppers, Craig Woodson, Jalen Hawkins, and then if you want to count Brendan Schooler, you can, because we know he plays a little bit of safety for them. But even with Schooler, that's 4 safeties. That's not enough. You probably want to keep 5. Definitely, if you're not counting Schooler, you're going to need another. Yeah. So
if they're still playing a lot of nickel or even big nickel, like, you're going to want more than 4, I would say.
So that could come external, but Del Pettis, I thought, had a good year last year. I think he's played well in the kicking game so far this summer. He hasn't had a ton of run on defense, but does he put himself back in the mix? Does Marcus Epps put himself back in the mix? Like, he's looked like a bubble player. I lean a little more Pettis in that regard, because if we're specifically talking about replacing Kyle Duggar, Hawkins is a free safety. Woodson's kind of a tweener, but they've been using more safety. So now all of a sudden, you don't have any depth at box safety, which is where they've been flush for a few years now. So that's where I kind of lean Pettis, but maybe they play Epps on the back end and Woodson plays more in the box, something like that. I don't know. But, I think if you're I had Del Pettis as my 55th player, I think, on my roster projection when I did it earlier this week. So he's right.
True bubble.
Right. We'll see where Marcus
bubble guy.
Up. But to me, I don't think they're going to keep both of them. But I think between those two guys, there's probably a job to be won.
Yeah, so Epps has been, a little disappointing because they brought him in presumably as one of these other veterans, like, I know short-term deal, but like a Calebon Chason and these other defensive guys that they brought in on short-term deals to really step in and make like an immediate impact on the team. And Marcus Epps, especially because he is that free safety that we've been waiting for all summer. And I know that the conversation's changed a little bit with Kyle Duggar sort of going backward and now becoming a trade candidate. Now we got to wonder about who's going to play around the line of scrimmage at safety. I think Kyle Duggar can still be very good in that role, but that's pretty expensive if you're only playing him against the run and short yardage type of situations. So Epps, I still wonder about. Like, I know he's looked like he's been slow to sort of get going here, but is he a guy that you put on the 53 and then he goes on IR and then you give him a few weeks to keep recovering from whatever it is that he's still coming back from that has slowed him,
right?
With a short-term Foxborough flu type situation for Marcus Epps or PUP or something. So I wonder if he's a guy that sneaks onto the 53 but then just starts the season on the shelf and then you finally get something out of him later in the year. Otherwise, yeah, I'd be leaning Del Pettis for that spot. He's a guy that can play around the line of scrimmage. He's played a little on special teams. So yeah, like, he's a guy that I wouldn't give up on either because he's young and undrafted guy. I feel like has sort of, he's made a bit of as much of an impact as you could expect from an undrafted safety in his second year. I'm not calling him an impact guy or anything, but he feels like a guy who could be your 5th safety anyway.
He's shown up,
or be like a cheap replacement for Duggar.
Yeah. And it's a good point on Epps too that you make, that tore his ACL in September, like last September. So he is about a year removed now. So you start getting back, but maybe if they're patient, give it a couple of weeks. Maybe you start to get a different player once you get into the second half of the season. Not a player I'd give up on. Again, if you're only going to keep 5 safeties and you're moving on from Duggar, I just think you have enough depth back there that Pettis makes more sense, but I'm not totally out on the idea of Marcus Epps either. Your second thing that you're looking for. So we have potential trade showcases. We have depth at safety. What's next?
Yeah, I think anybody that watches this show consistently knows that I just harp on the defensive line constantly. But that's still something I'm looking for, especially the depth, right? Like we sort of know what their edge guys and interior guys are going to be, once the season starts. Like you got Barmore, you got Milton Williams, you got Kyrus Tonga on the interior, and then you got Keon White, you got Harold Landry, you got Caleb Chase on. But what's going to happen after them? Like we got guys that I feel like have sort of made some plays, whether it's in practices or in the preseason. Truman Jones on the edge. Elijah Ponder. Is that a guy that he's still around, right?
Yeah.
So
definitely.
I wasn't sure about that.
Raving about him the other day.
Yeah, so like Ponder and Jones, I feel like has been an interesting kind of battle. I just don't know that both of those guys are going to make the team. Like one of them could end up on the practice squad, so like both of them could end up staying in New England. But I feel like only one of those guys might actually make the 53, if any of them. And then so on the interior, yes, you got Barmore, Williams, and Tonga. That's going to be a steady rotation of guys, but you can't go in with just those guys at D tackle. Like you're going to have someone, at least a fourth guy on the interior. And so they brought in Kyle Pecco recently. He has experience with Vrabel. I'm still wondering what the deal is with Joshua Farmer. I know it was a day 3 draft pick, not necessarily a roster lock, but he's a guy that maybe they keep around and develop. Jeremiah Farms is still here. He can make an impact as a pass rusher anyway. I feel like if Barmore, and this is the other thing, Barmore isn't necessarily a lock to stay on the field. And Milton Williams is a guy that he could definitely make an impact as a pass rusher, but you might not want to have him on the field all the time in running situations. And so Farms is a guy that can make an impact as a pass rusher for sure. Joshua Farmer feels like a guy who could be more well-rounded, could play in either situation. But I feel like he hasn't made enough headway as a rookie. I know he's a day 3 pick, but it felt like he was a sort of a sneaky value pick for them. But he hasn't really been able to rise up the depth chart. But like that's a position that's worth watching because A, I don't know how much depth they have after the main guys they have, and B, like I don't know that these guys are locks to stay on the field consistently for one reason or another. And so those guys, it's going to be interesting to see who can make the biggest impact in this game and make the biggest case for themselves to make the end of the roster.
Yeah, the depth there is shaky, and I know you were kind of high on Isaiah Aiton earlier in camp.
That's another one. Yeah. He's on IR.
He's the exact guy you're kind of looking for to just round out that group. And like you said, he's on IR. Obviously, he's not in the picture anymore, so that hurts. This could be a spot where maybe a guy comes in at externally and they add somebody, which just to clarify for Felker, it's not necessarily a good thing. But I will say, so doing Catch 22 with Evan the other day, we were talking about the Vikings joint practices, and remember how Bill used to always go and sign guys out of the joint practices who had a good week, right?
Sure.
So I was asking Evan if anybody stood out, and he said, yeah, there's this one defensive tackle, Elijah Williams, who was a UDFA, who had a good week and was giving the Patriots problems. And he goes, oh, but he looked like a guy who's going to make the team. They probably have a plan for him. I wouldn't expect it. So I had combed through like 5 or 6 Vikings roster projections. None of them had Elijah Williams on the team.
Oh, I'll take that, Lazar.
UDFA out of Morgan State. So just a name to keep an eye on there from Evan. But the depth there is a little shaky. I'm going to go over for my second thing. I'm going to go over to the other side of the line of scrimmage. I'm going to go over to the offensive line and kind of split this take into 2. So starters not playing, okay. What does that mean for guys who are fringe starters? What does that mean for the top backups? Do we get any more development in the battle for the left guard and center spots between Ben Brown, Jared Wilson, Garrett Bradbury? Just, Cole Strange poke his nose in there. Do we see those guys? And even if they don't, so when I had 10 offensive linemen on my roster projection, which honestly is probably too many. I just haven't seen enough to, and I had City So right on the bubble as well. So you can really call it 11 guys like in the mix. That's too many. But so your locks are Bryant, Campbell, Moses at tackle, Onwenu, Jared Wilson at guard, Garrett Bradbury, and Ben Brown. I guess round that out. That's the interior. That's 7, right? They're probably going to keep 8, maybe 9. So that's Vidarian Lowe, Cole Strange, Caden Wallace, City So. You want to throw in DeMontre Jacobs, who got some run with the 2s earlier in camp, has fallen off. That's 5 guys for 1 or 2 spots. And this is also a spot, again, they can add externally. But, Cole Strange brings the versatility. Caden Wallace brings more upside. I think City So, if you're looking for the floor, probably gives you a little more floor. Those are all guards. If you want another backup tackle, Duverdarian Lower, DeMontre Jacobs re-enter the conversation. They both had rough games last week. They probably need a bounce back. Like, it's wide open for the final couple offensive line spots. I think some of those guys have a better shot than others. But to me, like that this game is going to go a long way, I think, in deciding which of those guys make the team.
Yeah, I mean, you need a fourth tackle. I mean, you can't go into the season with just Campbell, a rookie, Moses, a 35-year-old, Bryant, a 7th-round rookie. Like, that can't be your tackle group. You got to have a fourth guy. The problem is DeMontre Jacobs has done nothing to earn his spot, whether it's in practice,
he's only hurt his
joint
case.
practice. He's only gone backwards, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he hasn't been. Maybe he's been about the same as he was last year, but he's not.
I think he's been
not
a little worse.
Like, even as a backup, yeah, like even as a backup, I don't love him making it the team as even the fourth tackle. And then you got Jack Conley, like he's been like the 3rd string right tackle. Venerian Lowe was injured to start the camp. We know what he is. Like, I guess maybe he could be your 4th tackle, but I don't know. I look at those. If those are the 3 guys they're choosing from, like, I'd be okay with them going into the trade market at the end of camp. And again, like, to be clear to Felger, that's not a good thing. Like, this is a bad thing that they have to, look elsewhere for a tackle still. That's where I wrote about it at 985thesportshub.com. Like, could the Vikings be willing? Could they be desperate enough for a receiver that they send you one of their backup tackles? And, like, I'm not saying that's close to a locker that teams are necessarily looking to trade or shop around tackles, but that feels like their best option when it comes to the 4th tackle spot. And the interior to me is just curious how it hasn't. I thought they had enough there where something would materialize, something would crystallize over the course of camp. But it feels like it's been basically a revolving door at left guard. And center has been a question mark throughout camp because Garrett Bradbury has been struggling. And they've tried Ben Brown there. It seems like they're not ready to put Jared Wilson there. Center does feel like a spot where, by the end of the year, they might be okay. Wilson might be ready to go, about halfway through the year. But, like, say Wilson's playing left guard, and then you got to shift him inside to center. Who the hell's the left guard? And so, like, I feel like it's disappointing that nobody's been able to sort of take the reins there. And Layden Robinson is another guy that's gone way backward. City So is a guy that was 2 weeks away from being the starting left guard last year and got injured, and he's never been the same. Cole Strange feels like he's on the way out. And so, yeah, very disappointing developments with all the guards they've drafted in recent years that nobody has really been able to stick. So, yeah, I'm interested to see who can really play the best in that spot because it feels like that spot is amazingly still up for grabs, Barth.
Look, I'd rather the headache be at guard than tackle, but it just sucks we have to do this again, where there's 2 spots that we're going in the final week of the preseason. We don't know the battle, honestly, at this point, not the depth guys, but between left guard and center. That's probably going to continue into the regular season, which was part of my justification for keeping 10 linemen on the roster projection, was that not all 10 guys are staying all year, but maybe to start the year until you need more roster spots to kind of let it shake out and see how things go. So let me ask you this right now, today, Dolloff, what's their best 5?
Oh, man. Well, Campbell's your left tackle.
Yeah.
I still would go Jared Wilson left guard. Like, I know there might be protection scheme issues as far as like setting the right protections, making the right decisions there. But I think he's their most talented interior lineman other than maybe Michael Wenu. Center, I'm honestly leaning Ben Brown there. I have not seen anything from Garrett Bradbury that inspires confidence. And I thought Ben Brown was at least a serviceable center even last year. So I would go with Brown at center, Owenu right tackle, Owenu right guard, and Moses right tackle. I think that's their best 5 right now. But it feels like they're leaning on Bradbury because of his experience, which I think is maybe important when they have a pretty young room overall, other than like him and Moses. And like his teammates comment on his experience and like how valuable that's been. His execution just hasn't been there at all. And so I could see Bradbury sticking around and being the center, but I feel like Ben Brown has been the better guy just in terms of his execution. So that's my best 5.
I was hoping we get to have a conversation here, but I'm right there with you. Campbell, Wilson, Brown, Onwenu, Moses. I think between Wilson and Brown in those 2 spots, like that's the better scenario. The debate is who plays guard, who plays center. I think Jared Wilson's the center of the future. I'd like to just get him there and get him rolling. But if you're worried he's not ready and you're worried it's too much, and again, that experience thing, obviously Ben Brown's not as experienced as Garrett Bradbury, but he's played a season with Drake May. He's played a little more in this league. Like, fine, I can see the argument for that. I think that's ultimately their best five. Do they get there in time for week one? I don't know, because at a certain point, you got to get these guys going, right? And you got to get him working with Drake May and working with the rest of the line to build the chemistry. Yeah. So unless they make that switch coming out of this game, and it's Ben Brown there with Drake May when we get out to practice on Sunday, that might be something we get to in the season. But we were saying last year at this time, how long's the Chuks Okorafor experiment at left tackle going to last? It was 12th place. And that's not me saying I think Garrett Bradbury's going to leave the team or anything, but those changes can come quicker than you expect. So,
and just quickly before we move on, on Wilson, to your point, like, could Wilson possibly rep as the starting left guard in practice with Drake May and practice as the scout team center? That feels like a lot to throw at a rookie. So I feel like they got to pick a lane with him to start the season.
Yeah, the scout team center is probably somebody else. I would think at that point, it's probably somebody on the practice squad, but
you know what I mean? Like, not necessarily scout team, but like backup center, starting left guard and backup center.
You know, if you want to start getting him ready for it, that's not the worst way to do it. It is a lot, but I think that's part of the reason he went as high as he did. He's a smart kid, understands the game really well. So
I'm not saying he can't pick up the offense. It's just a learning curve with, he's in his first training camp.
Yeah, no, you got to worry about putting too much on his plate. Absolutely. Not worry about you don't want to put too much on his plate. Like, I think he can handle probably more than the average rookie, just based on seeing how he's handled himself in this camp and how he handled himself leading up to the draft.
He's an NFL player.
Yeah, but this is a guy that only started 1 year at Georgia. Like, it's all very new to him, and you got to keep that in mind. All right, your final what to watch for?
The quarterbacks. I know we're not going to see Drake May, but like the backup quarterback feels like I said last week, it should be more of a competition than it is. If there isn't a competition, doesn't feel like there is. But Ben Woldridge to me has looked surprisingly good. Barth, your guy Ben Woldridge has looked pretty good in these preseason games, and I know he's going up against third and fourth stringers, guys that aren't going to be playing in the NFL this year. But all he has to be is a backup quarterback. Like, hopefully, Drake May can stay healthy throughout the course of the season. But if Drake May goes down right now, I'd feel better putting Woldridge in there than Joshua Dobbs. Josh Dobbs has been all over the place in the preseason. So I think Josh Dobbs has been in the league long enough, though, that if he puts together a strong finish here, like if we come out of tonight saying Josh Dobbs had a pretty clean game and made some plays, then I'd probably feel better. It's just that I feel like he's had consistently shaky summer here, that I don't feel great about his chances of all of a sudden putting together a strong finale here. And Woldridge is a guy where he hasn't had many chances to really show out in training camp, being the third string quarterback. But this is his chance. This has been his chance in the preseason to really make plays, and he's made some plays out there. So I've been impressed with him, and I want to see this become more of a competition. I don't know if it is. We're a little late in the game here, but I would love to see Woldridge stick around in one way or another. And like if it's gonna be Dobbs, and that's their decision, they're sticking to it. I would hope they can still find a way to hold on to Woldridge, because I feel like he's been better than Dobbs.
So I think based on what Mike Vrabel said last week, like Dobbs is going to be the backup quarterback. I think it's about the experience, just what he brings to the room as a veteran that obviously Ben Woldridge is not going to give you as a rookie.
Yeah.
So I think on that, Dobbs is locked in as the backup quarterback. What I think Woldridge has done, you need a third quarterback in the building, at least on the practice squad, because that's your scout team quarterback, right? Ben Woldridge has not given them any reason to go elsewhere to try to find that guy. I think he's certainly earned himself a spot on the practice squad as that third quarterback. And it was interesting. Mike Reese noted today, he kind of had some notes about his roster projection, that is Woldridge shown him enough that he gets a third quarterback spot, that they carry three. It would allow them to use the emergency third quarterback. You can't use that with a practice squad player. So there is some incentive to carry three. I'll say this, when I finished my roster projection, so the way I do it, I put everybody on the roster. I have all the names on a spreadsheet. And then, like, I take off the guys I know definitely aren't making it, right? So I do, like, all right. And then I from there, and that usually gets me about 60, 65 players. And then from there, I pull off all the guys that are on the bubble. And so then it's basically how many spots do I have to play with? I was at 50, and then I kind of start putting guys back in. I had 52 players. So the third spot, like that's where the 10th offensive lineman came from for me. You could just as easily argue keeping 3 quarterbacks. If you're going to keep a 10th lineman, like that guy's not going to play, right?
Right.
Third quarterback's not going to play either. If you don't want to, if you like Woolridge and you think maybe he's a long-term backup, maybe that's the guy. So and to what we talked about off the top of the show, auditioning for 31 other NFL teams as well. Maybe there's a team that doesn't feel great about their backup quarterback situation that, maybe we should bring a third guy in. This guy in New England's been slinging it a little bit. Let's add him into the room just to kind of round this thing out, right? A team like the Saints, the Browns already have 5, so they have too many, but also 3 of their 5 are hurt. So maybe that's a team that wants to add another arm, something like that. Who knows? But
to your point about the experience, like I get it. You don't want to have a second-year guy who's essentially almost in a second rookie season learning a whole new offense and a straight-up undrafted rookie as your entire quarterback room. I get that. I just wish maybe they made a decision at some point in camp where like Dobbs doesn't have it. Woolridge looks pretty good, so we want to keep him. Let's get an experienced guy to be the third quarterback. I don't know if there were options out there, if there's options still out there. But if they could bring in a guy who's, bounced around the league and at least can, learn a playbook and show, like, set an example for younger guys just how to conduct yourself and how to prepare for games and things like that. Not even close to playing. Woolridge can be the backup if we really need him, but we have this veteran in the house to really bring them along. Like, that feels like that would be a better setup at this point with the way these guys have played. But I guess maybe I'm making it. I'm saying all this for no reason because Dobbs is the guy. So I guess I just got to live with that.
My final thing to watch: special teams. Of course, we have the finale of the kicker battle. More than that, though, rookie long snapper Julian Ashby, rough snap last week in Minnesota. Had a bad snap this week in practice that almost led to a miss. Parker Romo had a good recovery. Really, Bryce Baringer had a good recovery on the hold, and Romo was able to it just sneaked it in. It was not a perfect hold given the snap. Got to see a bounce back from Julian Ashby. Like, I don't know that his job's in danger right now just because he's not competing with anybody, right? But we make the joke, or I make the joke because I'm a special teams nerd. I don't know how many other people would even get this reference. Tucker Addington's a free agent now. The Steelers just released him. That's always been, whenever Joe Cardona would get a little nicked up, they'd sign Tucker Addington to the practice squad. He wouldn't always play, but they just, in case they needed the second long snapper, they had him around in case of emergency. So
hey, you want $5,000, Tucker? Come on in.
There's nobody else here right now, so I don't think Ashby's job is in danger, but more bad snaps aren't going to help him, right? So clean it up, and if they start bringing other long snappers in, that's when you maybe start to look at it a little closer.
Yeah, that would be hugely disappointing, Barth, that they have to make a change at long snapper after they used a draft pick on Julian Ashby.
And
I know it was a 7th rounder.
Cardona.
I know it was a 7th rounder end of the draft, but yeah, like you moved on from Joe Cardona as part of the leadership purge. But he was at least fairly consistent. Like you didn't see much out of him in terms of mistakes and consistency. And so, yeah, that would be a disappointing development. But yeah, I'm looking at the entire operation there. I mean, there was I think the Borregales shank last week. Mike Reese said the laces were in on that one. And so that's not what you're looking for either from the hold. And I know like part of that is, when you have a bad snap, you might get a little panicky and just have to do what you can at the last second on the hold. You're not going to get a perfect hold off a bad snap every time. But that just goes to show, like, you get a good snap in there, then you get the good hold. Like, you got to get the whole process going. And so I feel like the kicker situation is what it is. I think Borregales is the guy at this point. Despite missing badly last week, but yeah, we gotta get that whole operation locked in because it's not something you want to have to worry about. It's not something we want to have to talk about. But the way it looked like last week, they pretty much forced us to talk about it, right, Barthy? So that's going to be something we're going to have to watch closely.
So there you go. 6 things to watch. Preseason game 3 tonight. Coverage starts on the Sports Hub at 5 o'clock. Kickoff at 8. I'll be on postgame with Joe Murray. And Matt and I will have plenty of coverage on 98.5thesportshub.com and a recap pod at some point, day or two following the game. We got to figure out the exact day. But if you subscribe to the Patriots YouTube page, as the Sports Hub YouTube page, or the Patriots Hub podcast, wherever you get your podcast, you'll get that show as soon as it's up. So until the next one, until the recap, for Matt Dolloff, I'm Alex Barth. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll talk to you leading up to roster cuts. Bye.